Brand new episode, Squeaky Bum Time, as I like to call it, our podcast, our brand new feature. So I got Darius Vassell and I got Gary Stevens to join me. Gents, just want to talk about things away from the game. Well, still involved within the game, but we're not analysing matches. Just a little bit of fun, just something conversational and relaxed. So the first thing I need to know about, because they're always in the papers nowadays, particularly in the summer, particularly during the January transfer window, and that's agents. How dodgy are agents? And this is a good conversation for the two of you because, Gary, I think you played your final game around 89, 1990-ish?
Yeah.
91 maybe?
Yeah, 91, 92, yeah.
So, obviously, very different generations. I just want to see how the role of agents perhaps has progressed over the years.
Well, it's changed hugely. I never used an agent for any contract with a football club. I was at Brighton Football Club as a 16, 17-year-old, got in the first team, and Alan Mullery, the manager, offered me a contract, but he told me how much they would be paying me and how long the contract would be. And as a 17-year-old, I was accepting of that because it was a great opportunity. I sought advice from a few people as my career went on, and ultimately I signed a new contract at Brighton. Then I went to Tottenham and signed another contract at Tottenham. And at the end of my career, I left Tottenham and went to Portsmouth. And my accountant actually did the negotiations for my contract at Portsmouth, and he charged an hourly rate. Now, I would think, Darius, that's a little bit different to your day.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually went through a period where I really disliked agents completely. I had some bad experiences with agents for different reasons. Having come out the game and looked at it a little bit differently, probably from further away, I can understand why they're important and some players will need them. I think the important thing about agencies is what are they there to do? As you've just described there, are they there to do your contract? Are they there to map out your career? Are they there to advise you? Are they there to, there could be a number of things. If you just want your contract sorted out, you don't need an agent. If you know what you want and what you're after, then you can just get an accountant and they can do the job. There are some good agents out there, so I'm not going to say I dislike agents completely. On a whole, working with young players now, there's young players now that have agents already, and they're barely 13, 14. I see it as a pool of money that some, people are trying to, benefit from, agent-wise, and then there's some good agents that want to map out these careers, provide advice, guide them, and allow these young players to concentrate solely on their football. So I understand the need for them. Me personally, I only ever had a couple of agents in my career, and then towards the end of my career, similar to yourself, I didn't have any agents at all. I did my own deals. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I was worth, and I did it myself in the end.
I think it's also because both of you are relatively, compared to some other players, loyal to your clubs. Like, for example, I know for a fact, because you've told me and you said so on TV, you never wanted to leave Aston Villa. That was kind of forcing you. Your hand was forced by the manager at the time. So obviously you don't need an agent in the sense that you were hungry for another club, you wanted more money. You just had no choice. And Gary, I mean, Brighton, you obviously Ipswich initially, early days, and then Brighton, and then after that Tottenham, and I guess they were relegated, weren't they, Brighton? So you went up to Tottenham, and I guess the need for an agent, whilst you were at a club, you weren't hungry and actively searching for another club. It's just sort of happened.
Well, Brighton had got relegated at the end of the 82-83 season. We'd also got to the cup final against Manchester United, so there was some sort of reasonable profile there. And I'd gone home to see my parents in the summer, and the phone rang at my mum and dad's house, and it was the Brighton manager, Jimmy Melia, who explained to me that they'd agreed to sell me to Tottenham. And my first reaction was, I was fuming.
You were furious?
I was fuming. Yeah, I was absolutely fuming because we'd just got relegated, and my stance was, why are you selling one of your better players? That's where I put myself, because don't we want to get promotion next year back into the top flight? And if you sell your better players, it's not going to happen, is it? Okay. There was an upside for me, of course. It meant that if I go to Spurs, I'm going to be playing in the top flight. I'm going to be playing at a far, far bigger club. And also Jimmy Melia said, listen, I've told Tottenham how much you're getting paid here, which didn't particularly please me, except he said, I've told them that you're earning twice what you actually are, and I think they'll double that. So, in effect, I got a 4 times annual salary rise. But I wasn't on huge money at Brighton, I've got to be honest. So yeah, I was loyal and I wanted to stay at Brighton and help them. And I never wanted to leave Tottenham when I left Tottenham, but I was forced out by the club because they had other ideas and plans, and Terry Venables didn't want me anymore. To
an extent, that also helped you with your England career. You'd probably argue being at Tottenham made you more high profile. You played the UEFA Cup final, scored a penalty, and obviously you were at Mexico '86.
Well, again, yeah, when I first met with Spurs, I travelled down from my parents' house to meet at White Hart Lane, and we spent 2 or 3 hours talking about football. That was myself and Peter Shreve, who was Keith Birkinshaw's assistant at the time. We spoke about football and how they saw me as a player, where they were going to use me, that they felt that they could improve me as a player, get me in the England side, etc. And then Bill Nicholson took me to the training ground, the great Bill Nicholson, and I had a look at the training ground, and they said, anyway, listen, go home and come back tomorrow and let us know what you think. And I said, great, I'll do that. And as I walked out the door, I said, do you want us to tell you how much we're looking to pay you? We hadn't even talked money.
Never got around to it.
Now, these days, I don't think a player goes anywhere or an agent does anything until they know what sort of money you're talking about.
Interesting. Out of interest as well, what about some of the really high-profile players, your Ozzy Ardeleses, your Glenn Hoddles? Did they have agents?
Well, Glenn Hoddle had an agent, a guy called Dennis Roach. Funnily enough, after the cup final with Brighton in '83, one of that agency's staff approached me about, would I like representation? But I didn't feel I needed it. I didn't feel I warranted it, to be honest with you. Maybe I had a lower opinion of myself than I should have done.
Interesting. Okay, looking during your time as well, Darius, did players know what each other are getting in terms of a pay packet and thinking, there must be the agents' works doing that, and I want to be on that same bracket, in that same bracket?
It's very much what it's like nowadays, I believe. They have an idea what other people are on. Some will know exactly what each other are on because they'll share that information privately between each other. But it's not ideal for players to be discussing these things in a footballing environment because it leads to things, like jealousy, greed, things like that. And this is the agent's world. They swim in all of this and they work it all out and try, you'd like to think, to get players or their players the best possible deal. So like as I said before, I can understand why agents are there and why they're needed. They have contacts, don't they? They can get you opportunities possibly which you never would have gotten without them. So there is a need for certain players to have them. Me personally, on a personal level, I managed just fine towards the end of my career, I believe, without one, because the only real thing for me to sort out was getting a contract, and I ended up having the conversation about my contract with my soon-to-be manager, Sven-Goran Eriksson, and it was similar to this. Around the table, I had a little chat. The discussion about money was the last part of the conversation, not the first. He was telling me about what position he wants me to play in and things like that. And I'm very happy for that experience, to be able to have signed for a football club without the back and forth and toing and throwing and might happen and might not happen. That's associated with having an agent around.
Let me proposition this to you. Now, we had a long discussion yesterday. It was a great interview. But towards the end, you were saying the reason it took you 3 years to officially announce your retirement, and at that point you were 35. So when you got your bad injury, you were about 31, turning 32. Yeah. Took you a year and a half, let's say, to fully recover, to get back to match fitness, but then another year and a half before you said, all right, I'm going to call it a day. Yeah. Would it have helped if you had an active agent searching for clubs for you?
Possibly. If I had an agent that I'd been with for a long period of time, who knew me, knew my situation, knew exactly what was needed. What I did have, though, was telephone calls every day from different agents, from different agencies.
Oh, you did?
Promising me this, promising me that. And I did check out a few of these opportunities that they were saying, but they never materialised into anything, and it was all based around what they were going to earn first. And that seemed to be a pattern that, it didn't sit right with me, to be honest. It was my career that they were discussing and they were trying to earn money from. And first and foremost, I just wanted to play football and do what I do best. And I felt more comfortable not having to deal with agents than to deal with them. I also had the PFA in the background, who aren't an agent as such, but they provide similar services. And they had me on the transfer list, the PFA transfer list, and was looking for opportunities or sending opportunities my way. But again, they didn't materialise. And the fact of the matter is it didn't matter who was there. You can't convince a club to sign somebody who's not fit enough to play. It doesn't matter. It's just not going to work.
Of course.
Yeah. I think there is, or there was definitely a need for agents because players used to get steamrolled by clubs. And it happened to me. I told you, at Brighton, my first contract, they told me what they were going to pay me and how long the contract was going to be for. I didn't have a choice. There was no negotiation whatsoever. That was it. And I know I was a 17-year-old kid and very grateful at the time. But, you know, the club had the power. It's now gone far too far the other way, and the player and stroke agent now has all the power.
Do you think there's too much power involved?
Yeah, personally, yes. Now, some people would say, well, you sound like an old footballer. Well, arguably I am. But I think that, yes, the agent today dictates far too much.
Because they're very vocal. I mean, Mino Raiola especially. He's on Twitter, and every time he tweets something, and it's in relevance to, say, a Paul Pogba, Erling Haaland, it becomes global news. That's how vocal the agent has become. He's not behind the scenes orchestrating deals and maneuvering this person and that person. He's become a spokesperson himself.
Yeah, it's the environment that we're in now. It's an avenue for an agent to get their voice out there. I think it's really competitive for agents now as well. I think with the rule changes that have come into play, I think you can have you can have somebody represent you who doesn't have a license to be an agent now. I believe so don't quote me on that. So that means that agents now have to battle with, you know, a lot of different people for that work, and it doesn't surprise me to see them out there, you know, trying to be heard or trying to get their voice out there.
Yeah, you brought up the license, etc. I've read an article recently, and it clarified the difference, say, between American agents and American sports. So you have to have proper coaching license, a degree in accounting, I can't remember, or something. So it's a lot more thorough. There's a lot more checks and balances involved. Whereas technically, if I wanted to become an agent, I could probably do it pretty soon.
I think the key to it all is the age now of players. It's how quickly or how soon can you get a player on board with potential to be quality, so they can stay with you and your company for the whole career, and this agent can earn this deal and that deal and that deal. I think that's what they're trying to do now. What players have now is the option or the opportunity to have members of their family represent them. And from a player's perspective, if you've got your parent or your uncle or somebody who's got some sort of know-how or who just wants your best interest in representing you, it might be more comfortable for the player to have somebody that they know and they trust from that perspective.
Yeah. When I first retired as a player, there was a London-based football agency who approached me and said, you know, we want to grow our stable of players, and we would like you as an ex-player to be part of our organisation to entice players to us. And I said, I'm not sure it's what I want to do, but okay, I'll come in 1 or 2 days a week for a couple of months and see how it works. And within about 6 weeks, I shook them by the hand and said, don't want to be involved. Really don't want to be involved based on what I've seen, what I've heard, how you operate, the way you're going to drive your business. And it was on one occasion when, having sort of put together a list of targets that the agency wanted to sign up,
yes,
as it were, I was told that the way to get them on board was to tell them whatever they wanted to hear. So tell them we'll take them to Manchester United, tell them we'll get a contract for them at Liverpool, as long as they sign for us. We'll worry about the next bit thereafter. That's not the way to do business. It's dishonest, isn't it?
Yeah.
That really turns my stomach, because players, they want to play football predominantly, and they have people around them, and they are trusting at the start. They do want somebody, or to feel like somebody's looking out for their best interests. And what you've just said there, that's happened to me before. I've had agents promise me this and promise me that. And when you're young and naive and you don't have somebody close to you to determine what's real and what's fake, you can go along with things, and you can find yourself, you know, signed up on a contract with an agent who probably not right for you in the long run. That's happened to me when I was a young player at the age of 18. I signed with a company. When I realised that they weren't the right company for me and tried to get out of that deal, they made it very difficult for me, and there was a non-stop effort from this company to earn money whilst I tried to leave them. I'll never forget that experience, and again, it's probably led up to one of the reasons why I don't have a great, you know, admiration for agents. But I do say now, now that I'm more experienced, there are some good agents out there, and I'm sure that there's some agents doing a lot of good work out there as well.
Because you're actively involved in coaching young players, what are the age groups that you're coaching right now?
So it's anywhere in the academy. So the youngest that I've been coaching in the last couple of years has been 12s, and the oldest will be 23s, 18s.
Do you, at the club you're at, Wolves, is there an education for them in terms of finances and contracts and all that extra stuff away from the pitch?
At Wolves is really good there at the academy. They put on a lot of workshops for players to help them determine what's the best avenue for themselves to go. We try and work with parents, but there's nothing set in stone in terms of we know this works and you have to do this in terms of getting your education up on agents. I think we could do more. I think a lot of other clubs could do more as well, but we're a club in the process of bridging that gap. I've had players ask me to be their agents, literally. Yeah, and a bit similar. and I thought about it, and I thought, is this what I want to do? And the truth is, I felt like I could better help them from an advisory standpoint rather than an agent perspective in terms of you've got to have this deal and go there. I felt more comfortable saying, these are your options. It might be better if you do this and that and that and that. And based on the way that you're playing or have been playing, I felt more comfortable talking to them from a football perspective, which is like what you said in America. It's probably why they're saying now that agents need to have these coaching badges and have some idea about the game. Yeah. Guaranteed, so players can be guided, responsibly.
It's like you want to be more of a sounding board.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I feel that. I'm not qualified to be an agent, so I'm not going to say yes to that just because there's an opportunity of earning money. I'm a coach first and foremost. I enjoy coaching, and I wouldn't want to taint that in any sort of way, because once an agent does something wrong, that wrong will follow them and it will get spoken about. And footballers, they do talk and they do pass these messages on.
Yeah, I'm just wondering who you guys could actually talk to about stuff like this. Now, I had the opportunity recently to work with Alex Bruce, for example. Alex Bruce's dad needs no introduction. It's Steve Bruce. So if he ever needed someone to talk to as a young player, as someone that's contemplating retirement, maybe who's someone who wants to head into management, he has his father that he can turn to. But not everyone is so blessed. I think I showed you both yesterday. Sean Wright Phillips' son is in the academy. I think he's 18 now. So he's got his dad, his uncle, and his grandpa, Ian Wright, that he could turn to. Do you think there were fewer avenues, not enough avenues, for you to talk to somebody, particularly as you both didn't have agents or didn't like agents?
No, I didn't have that level of, advice around me. What I had is my coaches at the football club at the time, and I really trusted them. I loved, obviously playing for Aston Villa, probably similar to your relationship when you was playing as a youngster. So I got a lot of my advice from my coaches. Again, the PFA organisation in the background of every player out there, they have things in place to help you if you choose to use them. And there isn't a necessity or a need to have an agent. What there is, though, amongst young players is this idea that it's glamorous to have an agent. If you're having an agent, it proves that you're one of the top players. So from an ego perspective, the agent might mean that you have more standing in the dressing room. And I think these are all of the wrong reasons to get involved with agents. And you're right, not every player can be as lucky as the Wright Phillips of this world and have so much experience around them to help guide them. And that doesn't mean that they have all of the answers. I think when it comes down to it, you've got to be good at football. You've got to be able to perform under pressure and do what your manager or your coach tells you to do. If you can nail that down, then a lot of the goodness that football has to offer you, it will come to you. It will. There's a lot out there. We was talking about wages and things like that yesterday, and the amount of money in the weights head in football. You've got average players now, and with all due respect, they're not the best in the world, earning sums of money which were unthinkable at one stage.
Well, you've got players who have never played a first-team game.
Of course.
Who are youth players who are also earning just crazy amounts of cash.
Yeah. And just picking up on what Darius said about, within an academy, as a coach at Wolverhampton Wanderers, you have a loyalty to Wolverhampton Wanderers, don't you? So therefore, any advice you might offer a youngster, surely it has to be along the lines to encourage him to stay at Wolves, remain at Wolves, because they're the people.
It's in your contract. You're not actually allowed to sort of influence things like that.
So you can find yourself in a difficult position where actually you think for a particular player it might be better if he went to another club, but can you actually say that
Not if Wolves want to keep him, no, and not if he's
There
under
you go.
contract. What has happened, though, is that players who have been released, and these are the ones that are asking, oh, Darius, can you look after me? I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what I'm going to do. And they're in that difficult situation of not knowing what club they're going to go to. They've come to me for advice because they've seen me as somebody over the years that they can trust, that will be honest with them, that wants to help them. And what I've had to do then is use whatever contacts that I've got, and we've managed to get players trials at clubs, you know, through contacts and courses which I've been on. And obviously I've met Gary over here, and he's another contact, and you can help players that way. And I felt a lot more comfortable helping players from that angle than, you know, starting to get paperwork and contracts out and trying to, you know, as you said, earn money in ways.
I hate paperwork as well. I'll be honest, I absolutely despise paperwork. You talked about the money and earning lots of money. When you started, you made your debut in '98, which is 22 years ago now. So,
Wow.
it's yeah.
Thanks.
Just speaking
Just a
maths,
reminder,
very very basic maths.
You should be in my book.
yeah. I won't touch that. Just
It's coming,
yet.
it's coming.
I wasn't born yet. Let's put it that way. Actually, yeah. Nor was Darius technically when you were at Ipswich as well.
There you go.
Amazing. But sorry, I was reading stories, you know, about how much players are getting. When you started versus now, how much of it was performance related in terms of payment? So I'm talking bonuses, I'm talking goals or clean sheets if you're a keeper or a defender and assists versus what you're getting now. Do bonuses even matter to players?
When I first came into the game, my contract was straightforward. It was, as you said, this is what you're getting, this is what you're having. Congratulations, sign up so we can, you know,
bonuses.
start playing.
No
the bonuses were shared amongst the team, so it was a joint sort of team bonus. There was no individual bonus for me specifically. That wasn't negotiated or asked for. I was actually just happy to get a contract at the club that I supported. Those things came later on when I established myself a little bit more. I was on the verge of the England team and things like that, and they were largely related to sponsorships and things like that. So a lot of my incentive-based bonuses were to do with who was my boot sponsor at the time. It was linked that way. The club bonuses at the time for me were all sort of shared amongst the team, and it was something that the team got to enjoy together collectively. And I actually think that was the right way to go at that time, and I understand clearly that it's not like that now.
Yeah. I certainly look back to the three clubs that I had a professional contract at, which was Brighton, Spurs and then Portsmouth. I had my contract that was personal to me, and then there was the club bonus scheme.
A generic one for everybody.
Yep, that you had to sign, which meant that if you won a game, this is how much you each got paid, and you got the same amount. And of course it varied from club to club, be it a league game, a cup game, a European game or whatever. I'm just trying to think what might have been different. Okay, there was a signing on fee, for example, and that would be spread and paid to you equally. If you signed a 3-year contract, that signing on fee, you would get a third, for example. There was always a loyalty bonus, which actually got paid equally across your contract, and that was at the end of each contract year. So if you lasted the 3 years of your contract, you got all of that. But if you signed elsewhere, you forego or you forewent that payment.
But in terms of the bonuses related to your actual monthly salary,
Yeah.
could you surpass what you were earning? I mean, how important were the bonuses?
The bonuses made a difference. Yeah.
Huge.
They definitely made a difference for me personally, because they were good bonuses, generally speaking. So there was some real incentive there, you know, to win a game, to be in the top 6 of the table. The win bonus went up. If you were in the top 3, it went up even more. And in relation to the wage that I was earning at the various clubs, yeah, it made a difference.
Did you guys get paid for playing for your country? I know currently, obviously, England donate appearance fees to charity, but during your time?
Me personally, again, it was linked to my boot sponsor. So if I made an England appearance in the boots that I was wearing, then I got extra. From a club point of view, no, it's not from the club that was at Aston Villa at the time. So there was no extra bonus from Aston Villa for playing for England. What I do remember playing for England is that we had, I'm sure we signed a joint thing as a team. So we used to do we used to do appearances or things like that, which was set up by, I think, ourselves. And then whatever money was earned from that, we shared amongst the team. So occasionally there'd be a bonus that came from that. But because it was a bonus, it wasn't ever something that I had registered definitely that I'm getting this. It was exactly that. It was like, oh, great, congratulations, something's coming in the post. Oh, I forgot that I did that interview. Oh, great, I've got a bit of money. It was a bonus in that sense, and it was a lot of money, and it did make a difference in terms of I could buy more when I went shopping, I suppose.
Or where you can shop.
Yeah,
as
possibly.
well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there was always an England players pool. So there was an England players pool which was set up for the qualification games for Mexico '86, and then that finished as we qualified, and then there was a new one that was set up to lead up to and through the World Cup finals in Mexico '86. So yeah, I remember receiving my share of that, and it was invariably based on your appearances. So if you'd played in all 10 of the qualifying games, for example, you got one full share of the entire pool. If you played in half of those, well, you got half that amount.
What about fines? Obviously, fines, I think every season there'll be one manager's fine system that goes viral online. This season, I think we've all seen, well, at least I know I have Frank Lampard's system.
What is that?
He's very strict, basically. Yeah. So if you're 5 minutes late, it's
I've seen that, yeah. I did see that.
I can't remember the exact figures, but it seems quite steep, but then you factor in how much they're earning, and it really isn't that steep. But during your time, how does it work? How do they collect the fines is what I want to know.
It's an individual thing. That, from what I remember, I've been at a couple of clubs, so the earliest fines, I'd be late, and we spoke about this before, so, a couple of minutes late for a meeting, so I'd get fined. They'd collect it in a separate sort of collection, and it'd be distributed over the Christmas, I think, on the Christmas night out for the guys. So it'd go back to the players somehow, and it was just something that we used internally. This was at Aston Villa to keep us disciplined, keep us in order. A bit of banter as well, because there were a lot of players that were, getting their hand in the pocket quite a lot. Especially for the young players coming into the first team environment, they got stung quite a bit. Going on to Man City later on in my career, I think it was a similar process. I think it was amongst the players, if you got something wrong, then there was a fine, you pay it. At the end of the season, you totaled it all up, and then the team would go out on an event or use that to enhance or boost that event somehow.
So is your skipper coming around and collecting the money? Is Gareth Southgate at Aston Villa coming around with a tin saying, okay, pay up £100 for being late? Or was it deducted from your wages?
Deducted from wages. I think later on it got deducted. I think if it was a disciplinary thing, that was separate. So I think there was possibly, if you got yellow cards or you got banned from games, I think there was something that got deducted automatically from your contract. So that was different. If it was internal, like the manager, you done something wrong, or you
playing with your phone.
Yeah, something like that. Then that would be, somebody would collect your money in, or you'd go and hand it in to whoever was assigned the role of collector.
Yeah, I think there was two areas. One was kind of the official one that was linked to your contract, which in your contract it says that you have to abide by certain rules and regulations. If you don't, then the club can fine you. Then there was the in-house stuff, which the lads did themselves. Start of the season, it's like peeing in the showers, for example, 50 quid, okay. that type of thing. Late for training, and the players would collect that at the end of each week quite often, and certainly a couple of the clubs at different times. There would almost be like a judge and a jury, and so this player's been late. It says here that we should fine him £100. Is there anybody here that thinks we should only fine him less, or do you think we should double it? And so there was always some banter, and then that money was collected in. And at the end of the season, yes, it was for the lads' party, or we would donate 50% to a local charity, and then spend the rest of it on a meal, taking the wives and girlfriends out. So there's
like a Judge Judy thing going on. Can you contest? Let's just say.
I remember this because you've just sparked something on me. Yeah, it was literally, we had our setup, and this was at Manchester City, I believe. As a judge system, so you'd have the judge, you'd get to state your case, and then you'd have the jury, and then you'd go out and convene and talk about it for a while, and then you come back in with the verdict. Great banter for the lads. It was really funny, and it was worthwhile the fine just to be a part of that. So yeah, it can get really fun for the team, and it can sort of bring you together a bit. No one wants to pay any money, no matter what it is. The players would be moaning over 50 pence. They wouldn't want to pay. No way, they're not paying. But if they got told by the judge that it was payable, then they'd have to pay.
For both of you, who was usually the judge?
That varied. So for me, it varied. It wasn't somebody all of the time. It wasn't a skipper all of the time. Everybody got an opportunity to be the judge. And it was really funny when the young lads who had got into the group, they were assigned the role of the judge because they literally didn't want to upset anyone. And, you know, it is a bit of banter. But as you said, there's two sides to it. There is an important one. There's a disciplinary one written in your contract where I think they've got the opportunity to fine you. They've got the right to fine you up to 2 weeks of your wages. Now, if you can imagine to some players, you know, it's a big amount of money.
Yeah.
When you factor in the amount that they've got to pay for tax as well.
Yeah. Give a shout out. Who was the fairest judge in your opinion? If you saw this person sitting up there in court as a judge, you think, okay, I'm in the shot here.
It's never fair, is it, if you're the one that has to pay? But the person who that there's no messing around with their decision is Gareth Southgate. Okay. Standard. There's this. Okay, I ain't got a chance because he said that what he says goes. But he was skipper at the time.
Yeah.
But all the other guys, if they're not skipper, then you can try and have a go at them and say, oh, you know, come on, give us a chance here.
Who was a pushover? I can imagine someone young.
God, why do I want to say Paul Merson?
Paul Merson?
Yeah, I think that's because he knew he'd be up there as well. He'd have to pay as well, so he'd want the favour returned at some point. So, yeah, we spoke about it the other day. There's a lot of characters at the time at Villa. So if it was anybody, it wasn't like that. Gary Charles, I remember him as. But no one sticks out, and you're asking me to dig into my memory files now. I can't remember that far.
Memory files. You're not a computer. Control Alt Delete.
I would say probably Gary Mabbott was the fairest and the most understanding during my time at Spurs, for sure.
I can see that, the way he talks as well.
Yeah, decent chap, really decent chap, but would still take the money, of course.
What about Clive Allen? Because I work with him sometimes as well, so he's a contemporary of yours.
Yeah, I don't think Clive ever sort of rose to the status of judge or anything like that. No, surprisingly enough. He just scored goals for us.
Yeah, a lot of goals. What was it, 49 in the season? Amazing, absolutely amazing. Okay, well, you're talking about that whole aspect of getting the team together and banter. What things did you do? Did you enjoy the most for team bonding? Because obviously in a normal workplace, and football is not a normal workplace in the slightest, you'll go on a company trip for one. Maybe you might go paintballing. What else have I done? Bowling, karaoke. What about for footballers?
For me personally, the best team bonding situation was the away team bus after a victory on the road. Sometimes these journeys are 2, 3, 4 hours. But if you've won that game, that is the best journey ever. The banter on the bus is unprecedented. It's crazy. It's a loud bus, and everybody's, you know, obviously really happy, organising what they're going to do for the night out. You know, because if it was a Saturday night, we would go out as a team together. It was that, it's come back to me. So the bus journey home, going out as a night out, and I can say it because I'm not in the football now, for a drink with the lads, and them all turning up and just having a good time, knowing that you've got the day off on Sunday because you've won your game and you've earned it, and then just getting as much, you know, partying as you can in, because on Monday you're going to be, you know, working really hard because the manager knows that you've been out together and they're going to need to, you know, get that stuff worked out your system.
Yeah, I think the annual Christmas party at every club that I was at, and invariably it was a fancy dress party as well. So lots of banter there. I remember at Spurs, after training just before Christmas each year, the directors of the club would serve us all as players the Christmas lunch.
The directors would come out.
Yep. So Irving Scholar was the chairman at the time at Spurs. So Irving was serving the turkey to all the players, and Douglas Alexa, who was the vice chairman at the time when I first went there, he was doing the Brussels sprouts, and you know it really pulled us all together. It was good. You know, you felt that there wasn't any distinction between the chairman of the club and the kit man of the club. You know, we were all in it together.
Best costumes you've seen?
Oh, gosh.
There must be a few that stand out. Okay.
I won't say costume, because obviously my story's a little bit different, and it wasn't fancy dress. But going out, who's the best dresser? Who was the sharpest dresser? Benito Carbone.
Really?
Very
well,
sharp.
Actually, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Very sharp. Sorry, carry on. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, I can always remember at Brighton Football Club, when we had our Christmas party on one occasion, we were in the next day for training. And we've had a great night out, and I've gone home, and I've come in the next day in my civvies, And as I've walked into the changing room, there's a Superman outfit hung up on one peg. There's a Mickey Mouse outfit on another peg. You know, basically, a couple of the boys just hadn't got home. They'd come straight in to train.
What were you wearing? What was your best costume? Yeah. Okay, while you think about that, I'll just regale the story. Some people might not know. If you don't support Brighton, you probably won't know. You're called Grease. That's one of your nicknames. In fact, a reporter came up to me from Brighton about a week ago and said, "Oh, you work with Grease." I said, "Oh, yeah, you call him Grease as well." Because apparently, back in the day, although I think you look better than him now, John Travolta.
Yeah. Well,
so you could have gone as Grease and passed off, or one of his other iconic movies, Staying Alive, where you could walk around in short pair of shorts.
So how that came about was that I just joined Brighton as a 16-year-old in 78, and the kit man, a guy called Glenn Wilson, who used to play for the club, sadly no longer with us anymore. The film Grease had just come out, and he decided that I looked very much like John Travolta in the film Grease, so he called me Grease, and it stuck. So anybody from those Brighton days, and Mark Lawrenson, for example, who has done loads of media work since, Mark Lawrenson, if I bump into him in the street, or Brian Horton, who's managed over 1,000 games, they'll say "Hello, Grease" to me. When I went to Spurs, it was just Steve-O, and when I left Brighton, the name stayed there.
Yeah.
But whenever I go back to Brighton, bang, there it is.
So now you've had some time to think. Your best costume?
I think I actually went as no, I can't reveal it. I'm sorry, I can't.
Don't tell me you went as Olivia Newton-John or something as a joke of the Grease thing. What about yourself? Did you ever have a fancy dress costume that you wore?
No, that never happened. But just thinking about those nicknames there, I did have a nickname, and they used to. Well, I had a few nicknames, but one that stuck was Diesel D.
Diesel D.
Yeah, why do they call me Diesel D? My problem was I lived 10 minutes from the training ground. I was the closest person in the whole club, and I was always late. And when you're late at the old training ground now, because they built a new one, they'd be out training, and literally the drive into training was past the training pitches. So literally you could, well, they would be on the pitches training, warming up, because I wasn't that late, and they'd see me driving in. One time I was so late that I didn't have time to go and fill the car up with diesel. And I ran out of diesel on the way in, so I had to get out. I parked the car on the drive, and had to get out and run. And they was all laughing their heads off on the training pitch.
So you just there, your car
literally,
just...
Peugeot 306 diesel, ran out right on the training pitches.
So what do you say to these young lads at Wolves now that you coach about being punctual, being on time,
tell you what
being
I do.
Professional, when you weren't?
I try to be, because it's difficult, because all of the coaches are really, hell-bent on being on time, and rightfully so, it is important. But when there is a lad that's late, I want to hear the excuse. And that's my thing. I want to know the reason, and I enjoy it, because I think, please top that one. Please try and top the Diesel D one, and no one's topped it yet. So I try to be a bit sympathetic to some of their reasoning, but sometimes they are, very wrong for being late, and they're making up reasons which aren't, acceptable, and they have to suffer the punishments, and that's normally a fine system.
Okay, I was reading an article. I read a lot, obviously, that Nuno, your manager, the head manager at Wolves, makes people wait. If you're late, he doesn't fine you. Was it Nuno?
Yeah, it was
Nuno.
Yeah,
right?
I read it as well. Yeah.
So he makes the whole team wait, because it's discouraging for an individual if you're fine, because suddenly you go into training and you're in a bad mood. That's the gist of the article. I'm surprised that he hasn't implemented that across the board as well at Wolves. That the youth academy setup are implementing a fine system.
Possibly that might come. He's been really busy and he's been doing really well. So the idea that everything that he implements with the first team goes straight to the academy, that's not going to happen straight away. What will happen is, over time, things will filter down, and hopefully if we keep him, or he chooses to stay at the club because he's doing really well, those things will, filter through, and there's a lot of good that you can get from it. It's not acceptable to be late, so although I laugh and joke about it, it's not something that I was ever comfortable with. I remember that feeling, that heartbeat feeling, oh gosh, I'm late again, why does this keep happening to me, blah, 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 this happened. It's not nice, and I'd prefer to live my life without that sort of anxiety, just to get somewhere on time. I'd like to think that I am strict on it with the lads, and I don't allow them to get away with things and trick the system into into saying that it's acceptable for whatever reason that they come up with. I can normally tell when they are trying to pull a fast one.
If I'd known you 20 years ago, I would have bought you an alarm clock. That would be the perfect present for you, I think.
My question was going to be, well, why did it always happen to you? You just said, why is this always happening to me? I'm late. Come on, why?
The reason, I think, is that, as I said, that being late for training, and I'm going to be honest, I wasn't late every day for training. It's just that whenever there was somebody late on the odd time, it might be 3 or 4 times a season, it tended to be me. And what it was, my reason for being late on those days was because I lived closest, I afforded myself more the luxury, more of getting up a little bit later, I suppose, or leaving a bit like, I'm only 10 minutes away, so I've got 8 minutes, so I'll get there. I'll just go a bit faster and get there. Just leaving it too short. We had a chat, obviously, in the car, didn't we? Complete opposites we are with these things. You were saying that if you was on time, you felt you were like you was late.
Yep.
And to be on time, you'd wanted to get there early. And the funny thing is I did sort of feel to that kind of thinking. I remember going to Manchester City and when Sven came, and I was thinking, I know I can't be late now. This is really serious. And I used to get a lot better at it, turn up early and feel really proud of myself, and try to make sure that I didn't get that reputation to be the late person all the time. I didn't quite shake it, but I made the effort nevertheless.
Well, who was late today for the recording?
Yeah, that was our driver's fault.
I know. He took it to the wrong place, the wrong studio. I had a quick question on my mind as well. Oh, yes. I want to make you feel a little bit better. So I interviewed Jeremy Aladier, and he shared the player that was always late to training at Arsenal. Can you guess who it was?
Aladier. So when he was there, captain? No.
He may have captained some games though. It was Freddie Ljungberg.
Really?
He said Ljungberg was always the last to training, and I found that ironic. Now, this is before Freddie Ljungberg got appointed interim manager after sacking Unai Emery, but he was still
Did he say why? What?
I think it was... He's just Freddie, I think is what he said. He's just this stylish guy who purposely, I think on purpose.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's a fashion thing.
Yes, I think so, yeah. Right. And I just found that funny because obviously he's involved at the time of recording with Jeremy with the youth setup at Arsenal. So sometimes the people that were slack in training, that perhaps weren't the most disciplined, would be the ones that go on to be coaches, surprisingly.
Yeah, I think, and that's possibly why when you look at players from your own era, you don't necessarily spot the ones that are going to go on eventually and be the coaches. I don't think there's any real connection between how they are as a player and whether that definitely leads that category of person towards coaching.
Because a few of your teammates, obviously, I mean, Glenn Hoddle, probably the most famous of all the coaches that you played with, off the top of my head.
Yep.
Did you figure that he would be heading into management one day?
No, not particularly, although having said that, his knowledge and his ability to, relate tactical things about the game to us as a group of players was always very good. Steve Perryman from Spurs was another one who had a management career. Ozzy Ardiles as well went into management.
Yourself?
To some extent, not at that level. From Brighton days, Brian Horton, who was our captain, who I thought was undoubtedly going to go into management, and he did over 1,000 games in senior management in his managing career. But maybe we're sat next to a future top-line coach in Darius here as well.
And he won't give us any interviews after the match as well. He'll forget about us.
No.
Who was the worst in terms of tardiness for you? Who stands out? If you had to bet on somebody, a former teammate of yours, always being late, could be for England as well, who would it be? Because I don't think it would be you, for one. I know you.
No, absolutely not. No. Gosh, who would always be late? We had a player at Spurs called Tony Galvin, who was an Irish international who, just didn't care less about anything really. I think I would probably say he would have been one who was quite consistently late, but never saw it as a problem either. Absolutely didn't see it as a problem being late.
Can I also ask, in terms of the team bonding aspect of things, what about when you have players, and I know it was less so in your day, Gary, when you had foreigners coming in? So, for example, Ozzy Ardiles. I don't know how good his English was at the time, etc. I know that his accent is very thick, so it can be a bit hard to understand. For yourself, right off the bat, Juan Pablo Angel comes in at Aston Villa. I mean, how do they adapt? Is it hard for them? Do you try to incorporate them in the team bonding and the banter and all
Of
of that?
course, yeah, that's definitely a part of it. The sooner you can do that, the better. Make it a lot easier for them to navigate this, world of football that they've chose to, be involved in. We had a player liaison officer at the time as well at Aston Villa, I remember. Not straight away, but she came in when a lot more foreign players were being signed, and she was specifically had a role to help those players out and their families. I think the question that you're asking is, how did they get to places on time and know all the rules?
Yeah.
The players have to show them, the players have to guide them, the players have to be there for them. If you're sitting in the meeting room, and I've been there myself, I wasn't always late. Always. I've been in the meeting room on time and somebody else is late, and I've had that feeling like, oh God, I'm so glad it's not me. And if it's a foreign lad, then the empathy in the room is for the foreign lad. He might not have known which way to go. Why didn't somebody tell him? And that's the kind of thing that it is. It's not the end of the world if a foreign player's late. I think it's, as you said, when players don't care about being late, or they don't see it as a problem, or they're not trying to get there on time, or they think that it's acceptable, then players tend to be the ones that don't, make it very far, or don't play that often for the manager. Managers want people who are reliable.
Yeah.
Your take on adaptation to being in a foreign land, effectively?
Well, again, there were foreigners. When I was at Brighton, we had a couple of Israeli players were at the club. Moishe Gariani was one of them. I remember his name well. Was a very talented player. Never really established himself in the English game. But no, you talk about player liaison officers and what have you these days. No, the players looked after the incoming players. So, at Brighton, Brian Horton was the captain, and actually might nominate somebody to handhold somebody through the first couple of weeks that they're at the club. And, the boys would arrange things and take new players out to see what's in the area and everything. But you had to do it yourself to a large extent. I remember when I was trying to buy my first ever house when I was down in Brighton. So I'm a 17, 18-year-old professional. And the chairman of the club at the time, a guy called Mike Bamber, who's sadly again no longer with us, he was a big property man. So I went to see him and ask him for some advice. And he said, leave it with me, son, we'll find you the best house and we'll get the best... I said, I want to go and find the house. I've been saving at the Building Society. I'll sort my own mortgage out, because if I don't do it, how do I learn? Type of thing. So I do worry about some players today. Absolutely everything is done for them, and I'm not sure that is a good thing, because at some stage they're going to have to go out into the big wide world themselves at the end of their career and fend for themselves.
So holidays, etc., you all booked it for yourselves?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
All done.
Yeah.
I've just also realised the irony of me asking about foreigners coming to England is you have been a foreigner overseas, Azerbaijan and Thailand, so you yourself have had to adapt the way your teammates would have had to adapt to the English game and culture.
Yeah. And for me personally, as a coach, it's been probably the best learning curve of my life, not just my football life, my life, because I've discovered that there's other ways that it's done. How you behave and do things in England is one way, of course, but when you find yourself in Baku, in Azerbaijan, guess what? It's very different. And there's certain things that you don't do, and there are certain things that you must do. And likewise in Thailand, very, very different again. It's been a real plus for me getting out into the wider world through my football coaching. Great. But for me as a human being, for me as a person, it's been just a growth period that I couldn't have believed would ever have existed.
And to an extent yourself as well, although not as long as Gary. Turkey.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that as you was explaining it. A bit of everything for me in terms of being able to come to terms with being in a foreign country and dealing with the culture and the change, time differences, food. But it was the players that took me out for a meal, and that was when I felt most comfortable, because I was amongst my team, I was out there, and they were showing me, how things are done, how they are outside of the game, and that was the most settling thing for me. Supporters took me out for meals and things like that. So they did, yeah. And I think, as Gary says, it's important to do that. You have to bond with your team and use those moments and accept that help from your team, because they want what's best for you. Because ultimately, when it comes to match day, they want you to be worried about the football match, not worried about, how you're going to get home, or is your hotel going to be closed, or whatever,
Or getting chucked out
exactly,
in the middle of the night.
I knew you was going to put that.
I had to. Do you know the story?
No, go on, tell me.
Oh, God. an issue with the hotel. I got evicted from my hotel
In the middle of the night.
in the middle of the night, told to get all my stuff out. Basically, the club hadn't paid the bills, and the hotel had a problem with that, understandably. And the solution to it is that this player no longer stays here anymore. I ended up going to a new hotel with help from some of the supporters to find me a best hotel, and forking out the money myself.
The best part is it's the middle of the night, but the press were there taking pictures.
Yeah.
So there's pictures of Darius, literally.
In his pyjamas.
I got dressed.
Oh, you got a dress. You got a painting, I think.
Yeah, got all my stuff. Yeah.
A guitar.
Guitar, painting, all my suitcases and all that. The painting was Ataturk. The picture very important to me. Guitar, suitcases. I think it's all my stuff. I think it took 2 taxis to get all my stuff to the other hotel. I had to pay for that as well.
It was quite a picture. You could see the face. Face like thunder.
Yeah.
I think is how I would describe it. When it comes to the foreigners coming to England, etc., do they get the banter? Do they understand? Because English humour, like my wife is Malaysian, she studied in England for 5 years, and she says English humour is the worst. Whereas I'll sit there and watch the classics, say Blackadder, to more modern stuff like In-Betweeners.
I think there's a English football banter which takes place in football environments. It's probably separate from what you see on TV and things like that. And it is hard to get, but it's really funny when a foreigner starts to pick it up. Starts to pick up the language, pick up accents, pick up twangs, pick up
Birmingham.
Things. And when they start doing that, they're one of you then, and that's nice to see. And funny enough, that was what I ended up doing when I went to Turkey. There was a situation where I'd first signed, I was on a pre-season tour, and at the end of the day, they went to the bar in the hotel with the manager, ordered loads of waters, and started singing these songs and dancing. And I was there, thinking, what you say? First of all, I don't know what you're saying. I've never heard these songs before, and what kind of dancing is that? And I was there for about 2-3 minutes, and then it came round to me, this dance, because we were doing it individually round in a circle, and I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I just went in and freestyled and started doing something, and they absolutely loved the fact that I was prepared to, make a fool of myself, and it kind of just broke the ice. I was no longer this, super signing that was going to come to say I was one of them, and it was an important moment, and I think it is very, it's very endearing when that happens. Obviously it happened for me when I went to Turkey, but I've seen it happen when players have come to England as well.
I have to apologise. I realised I completely knocked your singing skills. For all I know, you could have a beautiful singing voice.
Not quite, no.
So it wasn't.
And I won't be singing, regardless of these mics.
No. I don't think any of us will be singing.
Oh.
I certainly won't know.
What about, how did you find, say, Ozzy Ardiles adapting to the humour in England?
Well, he's now lived in England for decades, and Ozzy was and still is a very intelligent guy, and he used the language to his own advantage. So if he got into trouble, I don't know, maybe he's driving his car too fast and he gets stopped, then of course he can't speak English, and he works his way out of it. Whereas we all know that his English is perfectly good enough. And of course the other thing with foreigners is that if they don't pick up on it, they get taught all the inappropriate words on the training park. So a foreigner within a matter of days is able to swear extremely well in the new language.
And how funny is it to hear when
I'm trying to imagine the name I mentioned earlier, Juan Pablo Angel, the first words he might learn, unless he knew English before, and I'm not sure, but swearing, F this, and
it is funny.
Who's the funniest player? If you had to name one teammate or opponent, international, club or otherwise, to go and be a stand-up comedian or something along those lines, who would it be?
Well, I don't think this person could be a stand-up comedian, but he would always have us in stitches, would always be playing jokes and pranks.
Before you say it, does his name start with a G?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gazza.
Oh, wow.
Paul Gascoigne. Was just a fruitcake, really. Just crazy. A genius on the football pitch, but just up to do anything and everything around the club, socially, pranks with, your trouser legs have been cut off, there'd be itching powder in your pants, and a lot worse than that.
What's the worst he did to you? Personally to you?
The worst he did to me? Well, it stuck a little bit. He named me Team Wolf. because of the amount of body hair I have. So Gazza, of course, came up with the name Teen Wolf, so I was the butt of a lot of jokes for quite a while at Spurs. Yeah,
it's been rebooted into a new TV show as well. Teen Wolf. Yeah, it's Michael J. Fox, right? So Gary Stevens is Michael J. Fox. Okay, what about yourself, Darius?
That's a great question, and I can't top that. I think that's great. I wish I had the opportunity to have, been in a team with Gazza. I mean, he's probably going to be the ultimate, and there's probably anybody that's been involved with him will probably was going to say him. What I would say is in terms of funny, I haven't got an answer to that one, but in terms of charismatic and personality and humour as well, I'd say Dion Dublin. I think he had a bit of everything. Yeah, I think he's very witty. He's got the great timing. I think he could do stand-up comedy. I think he could do it. He won't do it, obviously. He's not going to do it. But I think that he's capable, and he's somebody that gets on with everybody, and at the same time, everybody respects as well because he's got a bit of fire in him.
Yeah, and obviously, let's not forget the dube. I know we talked about it yesterday, but to create your own instrument.
Yeah.
I mean, that's unbelievable. Didn't you tell me he sent it to...
Stevie Wonder has the dube, yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Footballer makes musical instruments and all of that, and that's unbelievable. Gents, thank you so much for the conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to wrap things up. Squeaky Bum Time. More very soon.